another day of playing my favorite game, Counter-Strike. Let's queue up and see what map and what spot we get. I will AVP window blade, and if you don't drop me up, I will leave the game. What, dude? I don't know how I queued up to the EU server, man, but I guess I'll just vibe out in connector, bro. My dude. Sorry, guys, my mom is sleeping in the other room, so I can't talk, but I will play A. Alright, guess I'm playing B short, and don't you worry, B anchor player, I won't be helping you in any bloody round, mate. Get absolutely done. Oh, jeez, first I fail my class at school, and then my crush rejects me, and now I gotta play B anchor on Mirage, man. I'm never gonna top frag like this. Or should you? I'm Hawka, the Counter-Strike scholar, here to teach you a lesson, and today I've looked at the stats all over the CT spots on Mirage to see which spots you should be fragging out in. Also, if anyone can get all of those accents right, I would be thoroughly impressed because they were not my best work. Give it a go in the comments, and let's get into the video. It is very well known in CSGO that B site Mirage is oftentimes a position you can struggle to frag in. But I wanted to see how much the spots could affect your stats. So I looked at the top 20 teams and averaged out the ratings of all the CT positions to get their CT-sided ratings across every single top 20 player that played that position. And I also picked a standout player from each role to give you guys some tips at home on how to play those CT spots even more effectively. So let's take a look at which spots excel at getting you stats and which spots you can struggle slightly more in. We'll start out with A site, where overall the pros only averaged a 0.99 CT side rating. And on the whole, almost all the pros were putting up similar numbers around a 1 rating, apart from Hobbit, who was the only standout with a 1.20. Up next is the connector/jungle position, where you're playing around mid and around A, and these players averaged a 1.15 rating on the CT side. And the standout we'll be looking at is Twistzz, who was putting up a 1.34 rating on CT side Mirage. Up next is the AWPers, who averaged a 1.16 rating. I've put them in window, but you'll see that they like to move around the map a lot on Mirage, and the standout is Shiro, putting up a ridiculous 1.48 rating on CT side. And literally every AWPer on a top 20 team had above a 1 rating on CT side Mirage. So it's the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop. If you're playing in window, you better not flop, boy. Yeah, that's right. I'm a rapper now too, and that's probably better than half the songs on Drake's new album, so what can I say? Up next is the B short players, who averaged a 1.11 rating. They tended to do pretty well across the board, with Frozen being our standout player to watch with a 1.32. And then finally, the one you've been waiting for, B site Mirage is indeed the lowest fragging spot on Mirage, with these players averaging a 0.96 rating. Only slightly below A site though, and Valde actually really stood out in this position since he switched to it, putting up a crazy good 1.27 rating, so make sure to stick around for those tips. Let's start out by looking at A site though, and take some tips from Hobbit. One of the positions Hobbit likes to play on this CT side is up on towards Palace, and while you can tuck into the corner here, I like how in this round, Hobbit's playing this angle slightly wider because it makes it just that little bit more difficult for NAF to pre-aim this corner that a lot of players will be aware of. And the nice thing about holding this angle is that Palace is such a tight choke point that it's going to be really hard for any Liquid player to trade NAF even if he comes here. And Palace players oftentimes do look for this fight, and it's oftentimes one that is pretty good for the CT player. Then from here, he sits in his own ramp smoke to get an advantage on any potential fights, which is something he does a lot. And because he gets this information towards ramp, it makes it that little bit easier for the rest of the team to stack the right site, and eventually you'll see him slowly but surely get into position for the rotate to finish this round off. Hobbit would also generally throw a flash over to mid early in these rounds, although this is something you need to communicate with your teammates. and then he'd generally tend to molly ramp before smoking it a little later. And you'll see in this round, yet again, he's playing close in this smoke. And one of the upsides of this is once that smoke fades, you should get a decent chance to have an advantage in these fights. And in this round, Liquid are even throwing utility, preparing the push. So Hobbit is easily able to take 2 players out early and not only get these impact kills, but also get some good early info for his teammates in case they needed to rotate. When he knows he's against the low buy though, like in this round, he's much happier to concede site control entirely and just jump peek for info at CT. And even though Hobbit doesn't get any kills in this round, he never gives away an unnecessary fight where he could lose his gun, and he makes sure his teammates know that they need to be ready for these fights towards A. So it's important to contextualize that you shouldn't always play close ramp in case your opponents are on a lower buy themselves. When he didn't go aggressive, he would occasionally play spots like under Palace, and I love the micro play of taking this initial angle for the fight and then just slightly swinging out further left before the opponents can make the call to maybe just try and see if you can double up from this position. Doesn't work out here, but it's a nice idea. And then finally, we have another round where he's playing close ramp behind his own smoke. And the other upside of this play is that when you play so close to ramp like this, it's really hard for any flashes to blind you. Obviously, it's nice he gets this initial kill on the edge of the smoke, but then those flashes go over the top, they don't blind him, and he can easily lock down ramp with that aim. Now let's look at the jungle player in Twistzz, and I feel this is the position that most depends upon how your teammates are playing. For example, in this round, Twistzz plays the A site from the beginning, sitting in sandwich, and he knows that Brokey is holding ramp with the AWP, and Rain even puts down a smoke to Palace. So FaZe allow the mid control to go against them, so that Twistzz can sit in this strong spot, wait for the players to run by, and line up some easy kills and huge damage from this position. And in this round, you see a similar theme, with Twistzz again playing on the A site when he knows they're against pistols. FaZe are happy to give up the mid control. Twistzz lets Rain fight first, and then catches some unsuspecting players out before using that aim from under Palace to lock down this position and force Heroic to commit to the site and commit to these fights, so that even if he does die here, Heroic are probably out in the open and his teammates can trade. But there are also rounds like this one where he'll play mid to begin with. And while I can't recommend throwing this nade, which bounces back on window, I can recommend helping your teammates on A with this molly towards Palace, using some utility to then lock off connector as well. And he also knows, because his teammates are fighting from the site, he can push this smoke and fight with them with confidence to make sure that this A site hold is on lockdown. So the most important thing when playing in this sort of position is just knowing where your teammates are, what they can do, whether you need to back up A or mid. And so if you can get that communication going in Pugs, I think you'll stand a much better chance at knowing where you need to be and where you can rotate to have the most impact. Now let's look at AWPers taking some tips from Shiro. And the most important thing as an AWPer on CT Mirage is that you stay active and you call to switch your spots constantly. I see so many AWPers just sitting window in Pugs, and while there are rounds where Shiro will do this and get picks with fast shots like this one, there are also plenty of rounds where he'll start elsewhere. In this round, he starts by playing CT and is watching between ramp and connector, and finally gets the opportunity to get some kills over towards connector. Definitely a pretty good position to play if your opponents aren't going to be using nades too effectively, because you can keep your range. And then in this round, he just actually decides to start out on the B site, which I don't see AWPers doing enough, but it's definitely a play that can work well. If your B anchor is struggling especially, you can just hold this sort of window angle, get some nice kills initially, and Shiro does that in this round, getting a couple of nice early kills. And Shiro also had a round where he played connector early and peeked towards mid, and if you're going to do this, I think it's really nice to do it with a bit of a delay and just call from a flash from your teammates if possible, because that can really throw off the timing of the T's and get you quite an easy kill. You won't see pro AWPers just switch up their spot at the start of the round though. Oftentimes they like to get a pick early and then completely change their position and remain unpredictable. In that round where Shiro got the pick at window, he then quickly went over to B short, and while he wasn't able to get any fights from this position, he was then able to rotate over to A, and I love just how patient Shiro is here. Initially, he's just holding towards Palace because he knows the smokes are running low. Then he tries to force a fight from stairs, but once he misses his shot, he realizes there's no need to take that risk because of the lack of utility the T's have, and because he can just stay at range with the AWP. So he just sits back, really bides his time, and makes sure he's fighting with his teammates, and eventually gets that one kill he was looking for. And it's also a similar story on this other round where he had to retake towards the B site. He arrives on time for the rotate to get one kill while the T's are crossing to the site, but then doesn't decide to commit too heavily because he knows he'll probably be traded close quarters on the site. So instead, he sits back, tells his teammate what angle he's holding, and allows the rifler to move into the site while he waits for any peeks that might come his way. He ends up getting a kill from it, and Hobbit was able to sneak up onto the site while this was happening to win them the round. So this patience in retakes especially can be very powerful. Now let's move on to our B short player, Frozen, who gets boosted up towards ladder room at the start of the round. This is a spot he played pretty frequently, and this angle is definitely one I can recommend you play in pugs. Oftentimes the T's here will be looking towards connector, and oftentimes they'll also misjudge where this angle is exactly. So it's quite likely they'll end up walking into your crosshair while they're not even looking at you. And then I also like the way he doesn't try and rotate through mid, which can be very risky and can have a lot of angles you need to be aware of. Instead, he hangs around near ladder room. He can help the jungle players this way. He can keep jungle control, which is a good T-side post-plant position, so he's taking that away from them. And eventually, he rotates into positions at just the right time with the info from his teammates. I also love this round where Frozen sits in ladder room and waits out this molly and basically waits for Gambit to run by. This is definitely something you need to communicate to your teammate who's playing B, but you would be surprised at how often T's just don't fully clear this ladder room position and therefore aren't ready for a fast flank. And if Gambit are doing it because their molly didn't spread far enough, you can definitely pull off these sorts of flanks in pugs too. And in pugs, even if they don't molly ladder room, they still probably won't fully clear it out. In the very next round, Frozen plays towards B short early, but once his teammates stop fighting for mid control and give it up entirely, it's pretty important to know when you have to just retreat back to the B site and help your teammate, which is what Frozen does here. The jump peek to apartments is so nice because normally that's a play the B anchor makes, and that's what Gambit think too. They run in not looking at Dexter. Frozen can set up for some trades on this early angle, and then he even has this preemptive smoke to buy time to survive on this B site, which he pops out of for another nice kill. Really nice round from Frozen, helping his teammates and also helping set up his own kills. And then this final round, I really love if you can get the early mid control on CT side, which is what Mouse Sports do in this round. And because they have mid control, they decide they don't need Frozen on short, and they boost him up on the B bomb site. And again, when you couple this with the normal B anchor Dexter playing back from kitchen with the AWP and getting an early kill, Gambit look at the kill feed. They think they've got the B anchor trapped in kitchen so that the B site is clear, and little do they realize that they've completely overlooked Frozen, who's able to have huge impact from this boosted spot. And it's another example of how these plays work in pro games with some setup behind them, so they can definitely work for you in pugs. And finally, we'll take a look at our B anchor sensei, Valde. In this first round, he's mollied early, he puts the smoke down, and if we pause when he gets blinded here, I actually really like how he goes closer range up to this wall while blind. Obviously, it helps him get cover, which he needs, but oftentimes it can feel counterintuitive to go for these closer range angles when you're against the pistols and you know they can run and gun and you know they want to get close range. But in this specific spot, by going for this closer angle, it makes it so that the T's have to run all the way out through the apartments to actually fight him. And it also means he's not as open to the players who drop out through window, as they have to push all the way towards the site to kill him. So it's easily going to help his teammates get in on the rotate, and those angles from kitchen are much easier to see up towards that exit of apartments rather than in the actual apartments themselves. Not that that matters too much in this round though, because valde does deliver himself with a bunch of the frags. But that player who did jump out through the apartments towards the site can't spot him because he's playing so close to this wall. And then this final play I've saved till the end of the video because it's a really cool one. valde chucks the deep molly into apartments early, which allows him to jump up into apps. Then he throws a nade, and these early nades are making so much noise that he can underhand his own flash. Complexity aren't able to hear him too easily as he goes stomping into the apartments, and you see both Complexity players are not ready for valde whatsoever. This flash helped blind them. He gets up close, and he catches two of them off guard. And again, it's another one of these scenarios where if Complexity can't hear his footsteps here, half of the players in matchmaking are probably playing with their volume on like 0. So you can definitely get away with this in games too. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, you probably enjoyed it. So why not subscribe? I'm trying to hit 50k subs by the end of the year. I could do with your help. And other than that, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.